This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Behind the Pen. I am your host, Mike Rankin, and for this show, I'm by myself tonight. And that's okay, because there's plenty to talk about, and I have opinions on a bunch of stuff that I want you to listen to, and you're forced to if you're listening to this podcast. First, I want to say, wow, thank you all for the support. It's been great. My third episode, everything's been going well. And there's plenty of topics to keep talking about because, well, first, the White Sox never cease to entertain us with this Adam LaRoche stuff. And then we also have some Bears talk to get to because they've been making moves in free agency, and I'm very pleased with what's been going on. And Ryan Pace has been proving to me so far that, yeah, I definitely believe in this guy. Especially with John Fox around influencing his decision-making. I'm so far so good, in my opinion. Also, it's March Madness season, and I'm going to be the first to tell you that I'm not the biggest college basketball guy. I'm going to be honest. If you asked me who the best college basketball player was, I wouldn't know at all. Straight up. Simmons, maybe? You're going to have to listen to my other coworkers, maybe Ricky Widmer and Sean Anderson and the other part of the MVP crew. So let's get into this Adam LaRoche stuff because it's been all over the news and it's been this story that's been kind of blown out of proportion in my opinion. And it really shouldn't have been a story to begin with, but here we are. Let's go from the start. Adam LaRoche apparently signed a deal with the White Sox prior to last season, and it wasn't in the contract that his son could be there every day, and it was like a verbal agreement that his son was able to have a locker, was able to travel with the team, and his father, Mr. LaRoche, his name is Drake LaRoche, so Drake was able to follow his father on the field, in practice, in the clubhouse. He was everywhere, and I mean, this wasn't once in a while. He was there every single day, and it's kind of appalling to me that this kid is following his father around throughout this entire baseball season, 162 game stretch, even on the road. But anyway, that's the case. So there was a verbal agreement there, and that was a condition that LaRoche and the White Sox agreed upon, and they signed together. So LaRoche is a member of the White Sox, and his son was a part of the team pretty much. And, you know, he didn't cause any problems. Everything I've read says that he's a very well-mannered kid. He does everything right. That's good to hear. That's great. But at the same time, you have this discrepancy in perception. Is it okay to have a kid in the workplace? Well, you talk about it in that sense. It's different because Major League Baseball isn't a regular office job. Major League Baseball is pretty much you go in, have a cup of coffee, you get to the clubhouse, you relax a little bit. It's their sanctuary. It's a player's sanctuary. And for me personally, I think it would have to bother at least one person for a kid to be around them. Okay, so whatever the case is. Apparently it wasn't an issue last year, but this year there's a different squad. White Sox made a bunch of moves. They brought in guys, veterans like Jimmy Rollins, Austin Jackson could be considered a veteran, Todd Frazier, Brett Lawrie is considered a mainstay in the league so far. And I'm not saying that one of these guys, because it hasn't been reported that these guys went and said something about it, but something happened for Kenny Williams, the president of the White Sox, to put an end to this little charade that this Drake and Adam Bond type thing that they had. And it's really interesting to dive into, I guess, because there's different perspectives to it. Teammates are saying, yes, please, it's fine. Let this kid be a part of it. Family first. We see all these family first posts. And obviously, players are going to be supportive of their guy, and they're going to back him publicly no matter what. But behind the scenes, you have to wonder, somebody's going to have to take issue to this. And for me, this happening in March, late March 15th, it tells me something. So Adam LaRoche decides to retire, leaves $13 million on the table because Kenny Williams asked him to dial it back, and that's a direct quote, to dial it back on bringing his son around the clubhouse and stuff for the 2016 season. And apparently that was enough for him to say, all right, I'm done. It wasn't because Adam LaRoche was the biggest bum in the league last year. It wasn't because he's got back problems this season. It wasn't because I don't know what it was, but apparently it was because of his son. It's not because of his play, because that's, 35, 36 years old. He just gave it up. And so he used his son as the reason, which is kind of, I don't know. I kind of have a problem with that, going publicly saying, yeah, I retired because of my son. But he wanted to make it clear that, him and his son have this bond. But now Kenny Williams is impeding in it, and he impeded on his verbal agreement, so now he's walking away. Okay, that's your decision. Now, suddenly, people are taking sides. Oh, the White Sox are at fault. I'm all for Adam LaRoche. I'm all for Kenny Williams. There's one concrete answer and one side to this, and it's the White Sox. They're right. They're all good in making this decision. You have a player, even one player who has a problem with Adam LaRoche's son being in the clubhouse. That's enough for someone to step in and say, hey, man, can't have this happen anymore, because this is their place. This is their home. They do what they want in there. You see that with a kid being around, players are going to have to manage their language, obviously, and they're going to have to, if you want to confront him, because Adam LaRoche was terrible last year, and if he was struggling or doing whatever, you want to confront this guy, how are you going to do it with his son right next to him? That's just kind of awkward, to be flat out honest about it. So that just puts players in an awkward position. Another thing, you have his son on the field. He has his own locker. He's 14 years old. He doesn't go to school, apparently. Apparently, he's the deal with his schooling is, which is fine. Everybody has their way of going about their schooling, and you're a parent, that's fine. You do what you got to do. Apparently, he is enrolled in a school, and he receives his work bucket loads at a time. So he'll show up for a few days, collect the work that he's going to miss throughout the time that he travels with his parents or his dad, and then he's pretty much homeschooled from then on. And that's, if that's how you want to raise your kid, I don't have a problem with it. But at 14 years old, you're impeding on a professional Major League Baseball team. That's enough for me to say, for anyone in that clubhouse to say, yes, that's enough. I don't want him around. That's, this is ours. You can't have this little kid around. And that's okay, in my opinion. I think that's totally fair for a player to say, yes, I have a problem with this. And people are upset because the White Sox forced Adam LaRoche retired because they went back on his that's baloney. Adam LaRoche retired because he's a bad baseball player, first off. And second of all, deal with it. Deal with it. How is it that LaRoche can have his kid running around he's a well-mannered kid. He knows what he's doing around the clubhouse. He's not a problem. A lot of White Sox players even backed him, saying, he was a joy to be around. And I don't blame him. That's great. But for me, this whole entire situation, it comes about, and it happens on March 15th. Why didn't it happen in October, November, December, January, February, during the offseason, during the brunt of the offseason? It comes about now in the middle of spring training, and what does that tell you? Also, I have to ask you this. Is Kenny Williams in the clubhouse every day? Is Kenny Williams on the field with these players doing all these things? I say that because it has, if you think logically about this, Kenny Williams just didn't all of a sudden out of the blue say, all right, LaRoche, dial it back. I don't like it. I don't like it anymore. We're going to take down his locker. This can't be happening anymore. A player had to have spoken up. If I had to guess, it would probably be a guy who was brought in as a new piece that was added this year. Could have been Jimmy Rollins, maybe. But for the sake of the matter of this conversation, it shouldn't really matter who did it, but it happened. I am almost a firm believer that it happened, and there's reasons to believe it happened, for the obvious reasons, like I just stated. There were reports by The Score 670 The Score, that even said that, yes, it was a player who went to management and voiced their opinion on the matter. And like I said, one person to go and say they have a problem with having a kid around in the clubhouse is enough for me. And what is this kid learning while he's not in school? He's seeing grown men talk about whatever they talk about in the clubhouse. They're changing. They're butt ass naked. You want your 14, 13, 12-year-old to be, you know what I mean? It's just odd. This whole situation is odd, especially when he has his own locker. He's 14 years old. It's crazy. This whole entire situation is crazy because it's national news. This is being talked about everywhere. Adam LaRoche retired because his son, because the White Sox asked him to dial it back a bit with his son. They didn't ask him to completely shut him out. He would still be able to be there. I don't know the exact percentage of the time, but it should matter. They were still willing to let him be there, but I guess not being there every single day, even on the road, was enough for LaRoche to walk away. Bob Nightingale, who is very close with the White Sox. The White Sox don't really speak to many media sources, but Nightingale is pretty much their spokesperson. And he wrote a really good piece for USA Today. And I have some quotes that I'd like to share with you from Kenny Williams that kind of backs up. You could take it as you will, because obviously I can't persuade you if you have an opinion, if you're family first and for LaRoche. But here's a quote. Kenny Williams says, "Tell me where in America you can bring your child to work every day. And how can you manage it? How can you manage the next guy and the next guy and the next guy? That's not fair." Now, I understand. Yes, like I was alluding to earlier, would it be weird for more kids to be in the clubhouse? That would just be a total distraction. But what he says about bringing your child to work every day, it's different. Like in baseball, it's different than, say, you're sitting at an office job and you got your kid in your little cubicle. That's obviously a different situation. But I get where he's coming from there. Later in the article, he said, Williams told LaRoche, and these are his quotes, "I just told him that he needed to dial it back. That's all. Look, I don't want this to turn into something that makes Drake feel badly. He's such a good kid and so loved around here. But the kid is there every day in the clubhouse and on the field during drills everywhere. Simply, you have to make a decision from a management perspective or an organization at large. We went into this season saying to ourselves, we are going to commit and focus and not leave any stone unturned. So this is a stone that had to be turned." And where exactly is Robin Ventura on this whole situation? You have this passive-aggressive manager who really allows this to go down. He's just like, I don't know. It's just stuff that's happening, and we just got to look at it. He's not controlling anybody. He's not this voice. Because compared to Bobby Cox, but I was reading some stuff about Bobby Cox and how he ran his clubhouse. You couldn't listen to music. If you want to listen to music, you had to have headphones. It's like that. He was like, bam, strict. Like, you can't do anything unless I say it's okay. And I'm not saying Robin Ventura has to be like that, but come on, man, you're the manager. You got to create the culture. You got to create the flow of the clubhouse. You got to at least help manage it. That's what successful teams do. Kenny Williams went on by saying, "This has nothing to do with Drake's conduct. He's a well-mannered and respectful kid. Roach's teammates, past and present, love to tease him. They called him their 26th man." And that's great. I'm really glad that teammates enjoyed having him around and whatnot. But like 14 years old, you have your own locker, traveling with him every day. What is that? That's enough. Enough is enough, LaRoche. And people argue that, yeah, okay, this may have happened if he hit 300 or 25 homers and slugged this and did that. That has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. If a player has an issue with the kid in the clubhouse, that's a totally separate issue than if a player sucked the year before. So put that argument to rest. This situation just boggles me because he walked away from $13 million, and he obviously is coming off one of his career worst years, and he was going to struggle to find at-bats this year, and his spring wasn't off to a great start either. So it was looking grim for LaRoche to begin with, and we thought as soon as he retired that it was a blessing for the White Sox because, bam, $13 million back on the books. Are you kidding me? They can go out and do something in the trade deadline. They could go out and really make a move. Maybe Carlos Gonzalez. They'll be able to afford that contract, especially with John Danks coming off the books next season. But where was this? I don't think he had the mindset that he was going to retire in January. And that's what boggles me about this so much. Like, if this happened in the offseason, it would have helped the White Sox a lot because maybe they would have been able to land somebody like Alex Gordon and spend a little bit more money. But that's irrelevant at this point. What matters is LaRoche is gone, and apparently there's a divide in the clubhouse. There was a meeting between Kenny Williams and the players, and the players were ready to boycott their spring training game over this. Like, are you kidding me? Shut up and go out and play. That's your job. Do it. It's not your responsibility to bring a kid in and take care of. It's not a daycare. It's a baseball field. This is it's a professional baseball organization, and they're running it like a professional baseball organization should. I have no problem with Kenny Williams doing what he did and saying, "All right, enough is enough, LaRoche. Like, just dial it back a bit." LaRoche just, This entire thing has been blown out of proportion, and apparently David Kaplan went off and bashed the White Sox, which isn't a surprise because I don't know, he's kind of out there. Major media member has a lot of influence, and he's got to have responsibility for that. But he changed his perspective. He was all for the White Sox at one point, and then he talked to a phenomenal source, he called it, and then quickly changed his view and said the White Sox were at fault. The White Sox are not at fault at this. We need to come to that conclusion. But anyway, the positive thing is Adam LaRoche is out of the White Sox lineup completely. And bam, that's a good thing. So we can look forward to a season without LaRoche, and we can look forward to possibly a White Sox disaster because there's a division in the clubhouse. I don't know. I doubt it. I hope that this team can put it behind them as the season begins and they can just continue on to their quest like major league professionals. You know, you just got to do their job. Go out and play. Don't worry about this. Don't take sides. And I just want to, again, okay, there isn't any reports of a player going to Kenny Williams and complaining about this. Why would there be? Maybe it comes out in the next few days. I'm not really counting on it because it would just hurt the player publicly. They don't want that PR. So it has to be taken care of behind closed doors. Kenny Williams is biting the bullet on this one. He's taking all the brunt of the heat. I respect that. But you expect players on Twitter and social, whatever, saying, yeah, we back LaRoche, because why wouldn't they? That's all. That's all I have with this LaRoche stuff. There's probably more to say, but let's just leave it at that, and hopefully it dies. Hopefully this stupid story dies eventually, because it is stupid. This is ridiculous. A guy retires because his president asked him to, I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all.